Hey, thank you very much for joining us on the Photo Flunky Show, episode 121. Today we're going to be talking about the smart way to use keywords in Lightroom. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. My name is William Beem.
My name is Lee Beem.
And we're here to help you find your inner motivation, take better photos, and amaze your viewers. I want to let you know that show notes are going to be available for this episode at williambeem.com/episode 121, and you can find links to subscribe there and also at our player at photoflunky.com. All right, Lee, we're talking keywords, and this is something I know some people don't even bother with in Lightroom. They're really sold on collections, and I think most people are taught to use collections. See, I'll use collections in places where they need to be used. If I want to sync something up for, the Lightroom Mobile or now Lightroom CC. Since we're talking about tags, and I call them tags, I mean, in Lightroom, you'll see where it says keywording and then there's a keyword list. But to me, keywords, tags, I'll probably use the phrase interchangeably, so hopefully I won't confuse you in this. But when you're talking about this is adding a form of metadata to describe your photos. And I find it much easier to search on these than I do in collections, which is kind of what everybody's taught is how to use collections. So whether you have collections or smart collections, and honestly, usually your smart collections, I think if you've done it well, are based off of keywords or tags. Lee, I know that you really prefer to use tags at the moment that you're importing.
I do, yeah.
And why is that?
First of all, the way I use Lightroom, when I export my photos, they go where I expect to find them when I'm looking for them. I need a way to search, obviously, if a folder of photos gets really large, I need a way to find things within that folder, but I don't go back to Lightroom to search for photos that I want because I don't want to have to export them again every time I need to use them. Once I export the photo, I am done. It's kind of wiped and I've finished working on it and we are finished. Okay,
I just want to make sure people understand what you're talking about because you'll bring in your raw images. You'll tag them with whatever your keywords are.
Yep.
And you'll process it and then you'll export a JPEG or a PNG, whatever it is that you need for what you're working on. And those are what you're saving someplace outside of Lightroom.
Yep.
But because they have that keyword in it, you can then search for it using a different program besides Lightroom.
Yeah, because the keywords attach themselves to the photo, so I can search on my computer or on a...
It's something you can't do with the collection inside of Lightroom as well. Your collections in Lightroom are only valuable inside of Lightroom, but the metadata that you add to your photo stays there and you can search for that using other programs.
Well, yes, I understand that. The way I'm using photos, I don't expect to go back and rework a photo. Obviously, this is different for people who do. Once I've finished my photo, it's complete. When I need that photo again, I expect to find the processed photo as I did it. I export when I'm happy. And that's it. If it doesn't look like it's working out, I just remove it.
And if you're using a service, let's say like Flickr or maybe some other photo sharing thing, you'll see an example of how those keywords or tags are included with the photo because when you upload it, you're not uploading the raw file to these things. I mean, you can't actually display a raw file. A raw file is really nothing more than a database. You need to have a JPEG or PNG, something that's going to be a graphics format. And then when you upload that, usually a JPEG to Flickr, it's going to include those keywords. So that actually kind of saves you some time and helps people find your photos.
It saves you a bunch of time because I know putting keywords into photos in Flickr is a very slow and clunky process if you've got a lot of them. It is actually quicker and easier to do them in Lightroom because you can just apply to a bunch of them. I mean, you can do that in Flickr. I just find that it is much easier to do it when you get started because usually when you're importing the photos, that is the least amount of time you're ever going to have between the time that you took them and the time that you're looking at them, when you're working through them. So, for example, you might only upload them to Flickr like a month later. You might have forgotten stuff. The tags, anything that's applicable that could be, I'm calling them the tags, a keyword, is those are more likely to be fresh in my mind. So I'm not going to forget something that might potentially be useful. And I go crazy with tags. I mean, I have tags everywhere.
I think Lightroom is obviously the right place to do it because you may export this photo and put it on different sources. So if you put it on Flickr and you type the keywords or tags in Flickr, that's only good for Flickr. If you want to then upload it to 500px or some other source,
you got to do it all over again.
You got to do it all over again. So you may as well put it into Lightroom, let the keywords live there, and then they will go with the photo wherever you share it and export it later on. And that's really what the benefit is. It is a useful way to search for photos, both for yourself and for anyone else that you want to find your photos online.
Yes.
The trick is, what is the best way to use keywords in Lightroom? And I kind of hate to use that word best because there's so many things that are best. So I'm really thinking it's like, here's the smart way to use it. And I wrote about this in an article once before. It's called Never Create Lightroom CC Collections Again. It's one of those things where I just kind of broke it down to something that you're taking photos of someone, someplace, or something. And if you have a subject that isn't a person, place, or thing, I said, let me know. And it really breaks it down to the format that people have been using for thousands of years. Who, what, when, where, how, why. And then I also added a reference. And I kind of want to go through and explain these. Who is obvious. If my subject is a person, the name goes under this part of my keyword hierarchy. And I guess before we even get into this, I need to discuss keyword hierarchy.
Oh, I see. I don't know anything about those.
You use a hierarchy all the time. If you go take photos of family, underneath family, you've got, who we are. If you take photos of our dogs, you've got who they are.
Oh, yeah, my own. I thought maybe this was some new fancy thing inside of Lightroom that I'd never heard of.
No.
Okay. Look, you know me in Lightroom. I kind of go in there and I bother with the things that work for me and I ignore everything else.
That's true.
It wasn't a dumb question.
Lightroom will let you create a hierarchy. I liked Aperture better, and I had a wonderful hierarchy in Aperture, and I imported it into Lightroom, and it worked for like 2 days, and then it blew apart.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. But the nice thing about having a hierarchy is if you break it down under these top-level headings, it makes it very easy to find what you're looking for if you want to sort through things. And if you're searching for something, if I want to take a look for photos of you, I can just go in there and type in Lee, and it'll come up that way. If I had to rely on collections, that only works if I know where every photo of you already is, and I put it in the collection called Lee. Or in this case, if I've already added the tags, and I make a smart collection called Lee. So that's why the keywords and the tags just really matter so much, because it helps you search, but it also helps you create these smart collections, which I use kind of temporarily.
Yeah.
I may need to work on photos of you for a collage or some other project that I'm working on. And I just want an easy way to find out, okay, where are the ones that I know are Lee? And then from there, I kind of narrow it down, like which ones did I mark, with a number of stars, or did I rate it as a certain way? And you can start building these little queries like this plus this plus this. And then, there's the photo I want.
Yeah.
You can't do that with collections. And I don't understand why everybody raves about collections so much when they're really just not all that useful. The thing that annoys me about Lightroom, and I wish Adobe would change this, is some of the features don't work with smart collections. So for example, if you want to sync things on, Lightroom Mobile to other Lightroom platforms, it has to be in a collection. I thought, why can't it be in a smart collection?
Oh.
Because that way I can just go ahead and update the metadata on the photos. It'll automatically go in the smart collection and then sync around, if only they would allow that. So the idea of working with collections where you've got to drag something in that collection is manual and mundane, and it's just incredibly stupid. Well, I'm going to call it what it is. I wanted to mention that hierarchy before I went on. So like I said, who? That's kind of like my top level. If my subject is a person, I'm going to put their name underneath who, as far as whoever is going to be inside of my photos. That could be a model I'm shooting. It could be family. Even my dogs get to be a who. All right, the next one is what. If it's a thing, and the related keywords go to that. So let's say that we're in San Francisco and we go off and take photos of the Golden Gate Bridge or the Bay Area Bridge, or the Bay Bridge. I guess it's not Bay Area Bridge. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have a lot of things that kind of go in with that. I mean, some of it is going to be under where. It's going to be San Francisco, but what? If that subject has a formal name, then I'm going to use it there because that's what I'm going to search for.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Another one I mentioned there was when, and I'll be honest with you, I put that in there slightly as a trick because I'm going to say, why bother creating a keyword when Lightroom will read the data information from your camera as far as when you took the shot?
I know.
Tell me why you want a when in there. I mean, like if you say Christmas time, I get that.
Yeah, well, that's more a what as occasion falls under it. I don't put dates in there, but I do sometimes put the year in there if it's something that comes around more than once. Okay. And the reason why I do that is because I've never set the date and time on my camera.
Oh, shame on you.
I always only remember when I have a look and I'm trying to, and I see when it imports that it's got the date and I think, I must set the date on my camera. I never remember to do it.
I need to get your iPhone and just start putting in reminders for you. Like whenever, the daylight savings time changes, to go ahead and make sure it's updated there. And there's a little switch inside of your camera that will change for daylight savings time.
Yeah, but mine's
But you
in the
have to-
wrong year. Mine's
Okay.
like, I don't know, it's somewhere a few
All right,
years
so
out. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to have to take this offline and update your camera with the clock. If you're listening to this and you haven't put in the correct time and date in your camera, think of this as a reminder. Go ahead and do that, because once you do that, Lightroom will take care of all this information for you. You don't need to bother putting in when you took the photo. There are people who actually create really complicated folder structures, and they say, oh, I took this picture on March 27th, 1975. And they'll make a folder, for 1975. Underneath that, they'll make one for March. Another, and it's like, how are you going to remember what date you took this photo when you're searching for it? And it's just so much clutter.
I understand why people do that. I mean, I remember doing that with my first big vacation after I had Tove. And since at the time I thought, well, it's not the kind of thing we're going to do more than every few years, if that. I remembered clearly, because I've got a memory with dates and places and times and things. And for a year or so, I did remember exactly what happened on what date and where to find the things. The trouble is that we went once or twice a year, every year for the next decade, and did the same thing. We went to Disney World, and it became a little bit more difficult to remember, 300 days worth of photos.
I don't remember based upon time. I remember that I've gone to Las Vegas a number of times. I've gone to New York or Washington, D.C., or even San Francisco. I don't remember what year I went there. I don't remember what month I went there. I remember that I took a photo of, the Lincoln Memorial or the Golden Gate Bridge. And I
usually remember the year.
Things.
But anyway, the bottom line is that it's, I understand that mistake because I made it first. It's when you start getting a lot of stuff. I think that's something to think of. If, you start off and maybe you've got a few hundred photos. What happens when you've got a few thousand photos in a few years' time? Will the system still make sense without you having to tap into your memory for specifics? And that was
if it's a folder structure, it really won't. I can tell you that under my Lightroom folder, I've got one folder in there for photos, and all of the photos, no matter what the genre, what the style, year, date, anything, they're all in there in just one big folder, and Lightroom sorts them all. It used to be in Aperture, because this is something else I keep in mind is Lightroom may not be here forever. Aperture, I thought, was going to be what I used for a long time, and the photos were kept inside of the databases. But when I exported them out of there, the metadata came out, Lightroom pulled it right in. And I think if something ever does come along and replace Lightroom, if it can read those raw files and the metadata that I put in it, then it will sort it as well. So I let the program do what it's best at doing. The more I try to interfere with that, the more I will screw things up.
I don't interfere with Lightroom at all. I just kind of disregard some of the features. And that's just because I've got a very simple way of doing things. If my needs change, I may have to review the way I do things. But honestly, for the last, I don't know how long I've had Lightroom. It's been years now. What I'm doing works for the way that I work with my photos.
Yeah, that's true. It does. And you don't really use Lightroom so much for organizing, but you put the information, you use Lightroom to put the information with the photos.
I don't use it at all for organizing, which, well, I suppose that's not entirely true. I mean, I organize in terms of putting in the keywords. That is my system of organizing. But when I export, it goes into folders. And that is a system that I understand, and it makes sense to me.
Once you've processed a photo, you're done with your raw file.
Yeah. So I have a starting point for my for looking for my stuff, and I understand that you have a different workflow, and there's a reason for that. You're dealing with a lot more files.
Mm-hmm.
So my way of doing things makes sense for me, and I do think that it's the best way. Not because I'm conceited, but because it's worked for so long. I'm not suggesting that my way is going to be the best for everybody else, because I can tell you now it's not. This is a very simple way of doing things because I don't want complicated when it comes to my photos.
No, you want to be able to find them. And that's really what we're talking about. What is the best way and easiest way? Or the way I've titled this is, what is the smart way to find your photos?
If I was shooting weddings, or taking, if I was touring around, spending my time doing a couple of, nice destination trips every year, the system I'm using might not be the best way to do it.
I think it would still work based on the way that you're doing it. Because like you said, once you process them, you're done.
Yeah.
But you're not keeping things for a client. If you were shooting weddings and you had clients that may want to come back to you later on and say, oh, can we get a print of this?
That's what I say. It's different.
Yeah, you'd probably archive those photos, but then you could pull them back in and open them up and then do what you need to do. But since you're not working for clients per se that may come back to you at a later time, you're doing what's perfect for you. You bring the photos in, you update the metadata, you process them, you export a JPEG, and then you're done with it.
That's right. Yeah.
But for the rest of us, as far as keeping information, as far as whether it's folders or collections that have date information in it, as long as you update your camera's date and time, you don't need to do any of that. It is an incredible waste of time and energy. That's my chastise for today.
I know, and you're absolutely right. I never remember to do it, and I don't know why.
All right, I'm going to do it for you.
Okay.
I'm here to help.
You know what the problem is with my camera? I don't know if your camera shows it. When I turn the camera on, it doesn't show the date and time anywhere.
No.
If I saw it, it would bug me and I'd change it. But there's absolutely zero prompts until you've imported your photos somehow, somewhere.
That's a good idea. We should tell Nikon.
We should tell them that they need to remind us to change the date and time.
There's a computer inside your camera. Why doesn't it know these things?
I don't know.
I'm not sure either. All right, the next item on the list was where. And if my subject has a location, typically I'll put in a keyword in there. And I know that Lightroom also has the Maps module, and you can update GPS information. I used to love doing that I had a little Nikon GPS thing, which unfortunately the cable broke. I don't use it anymore. But there are a couple of different ways. I mean, one, you can look at your photos and drag them to a point on a map, and that'll put the GPS data in it. Or you can take a photo with your smartphone, which, will get GPS data, and it'll show up on the map, and then you just drag your other photos on top of that. But if you haven't taken the smartphone thing, if you don't feel like dragging it over there, just type in the place where you did it. If I go to Disney World, I'm going to put in Magic Kingdom. And if it was specifically at some ride, I'm going to put down the name of the ride. That gets as specific as I need to do. It's like, where are my photos in the Haunted Mansion? Yeah,
Lightroom's also kind of smart because there are certain things that I do in a certain order. Like, for example, I might hit product and then a range of the most recent product or most common products that I use, where I use keywords, will come up as listed suggestions. And I hit, crazy compression, and I hit that, and then it will tell me socks. So it gets smart about what goes together, and we'll start figuring out how you use things. So Lightroom will actually prompt you and help you to remember to put all the tags in that go together once you started using them.
Yeah, I like that little feature for suggested keywords, and you kind of have to do a number of them, so you kind of train it almost so it knows what to bring up.
It learns quickly. It kind of starts to guess after the first time you've done it, I think, and it just builds on there. Because, I've got so many keywords. But yeah, in the morning, unless there's something out of the ordinary, my daily photos, I literally click the first suggestion and everything else comes up in sequence. And there's only one variance on that. And when I hit that, the alternatives come up. So Lightroom knows what I do and in what order I do it. Keywords for me is a really quick, I select all that I've imported, and it takes me maybe 5 seconds to apply 8 to 10 keywords in there.
That's one of the nice things about keywords is it doesn't really take that much time. Some people I've talked to said, I don't want to spend the time doing that. Maybe at first it takes a little bit of time. You gotta type them in, yeah. But after a while, Lightroom starts giving you these suggested keywords, and usually they're related to what you're doing.
Yes.
All right, my next category is how. And really, I use this one for technical details or things about the photo. So for example, Lightroom will know what camera I used and what lens I used, but it won't necessarily know what lighting that I used. So I might want to put in that I use my Elinchrom light, or if I use my flashpoint lights. If I've got a Photoshop file, I may want to put in the post-processing. Did I use part of the Nik collection on this? Did I use Luminar? And just little things that kind of describe what I did to the photo. And that's for me, because sometimes I might be searching for an example of, here's what this light quality looks like. Maybe I've put it on with a beauty dish. Where are my shots with a beauty dish? This is where I put it in, under how. Why really comes down to, did I need to put this? If I shoot something for a client, well, they don't go under the who because this photo is not of them. But why did I shoot it? Oh, I shot this one for a restaurant. I shot this one for a magazine. And maybe not every photo gets this one, but it kind of tells me this is why I did the shot. And the last one I have is a reference, and that is kind of a catch-all. So for example, I will register my photos with the United States Copyright Office, and after they've done their part, they will send me back a form, and it will have a little registration number with it. I want to know which photos go with that, so I will go back and put that copyright registration code as a keyword in all the photos that are included with that list. And that way, if I ever have an infringement, it makes it very easy to go in and search for, here's the copyright registration code. Here are the photos that come up with it. Oh yeah, that's my photo and someone else is using it. Mm-hmm. Like Robin Leach, who's used a couple of my photos without permission on some of his YouTube videos.
Huh, yes.
So Robin, please don't steal my photos anymore.
Yeah, we call out people who do that.
It's happened from time to time, but honestly, this is what I think is a smart way to use keywords in Lightroom. If you just use this kind of age-old, who, what, why, when, where, how, and then I added the reference because sometimes I do have data that goes with a photo that isn't about the photo, but it's related to it. It's kind of called institutional knowledge. You may know what that photo is for or where you registered it. Those are just pieces of knowledge I put in as reference. And if you're curious about this, I'm going to put a link in the show notes. I had an article, and this kind of goes into a bit more detail. And it was at williambeem.com/never-create Lightroom CC collections again, with a dash between all those little words. And like I said, it'll be a link in the show notes. I hope this helps you. And we think that really keywords and tags are the smart way to organize your photos because this is the way you search. It's the same thing as going to Google or any other search engine. You don't go in and say, show me the folders that it's in. You type in words that relate to your photo, and that's how you find things.
Yeah. And if you've got a few minutes, go and read that article where the link is about never creating Lightroom collections again. I mean, I don't do them, but I'm always keen to read the alternate approach because sometimes, even if it doesn't change your mind, it reaffirms why you do things the way you do them. And I think it's always important to understand why you do things and constantly check yourself, because sometimes you need to adapt the way you do things. Other times you just need to be assured that you're doing things the right way for you. It's a good read. It really is. It wouldn't take you long to get through it.
I appreciate that. And honestly, I hope it helps you out. And if nothing else, it is good to have alternatives and think of different ways to do the same thing because you never know. You might be able to save yourself some time. Thank you so much for listening to the Photo Funky Show. As I said, this is episode 121, so show notes are available at williambeem.com/episode 121. Hey, if you're a Lightroom user and things seem to be slowing down, or you want to make sure they don't slow down, I've got an ebook that can help you out. Go to williambeem.com/LRhacks, and it's a guide that will show you the things that slow down Lightroom and what you can do to keep them running smoothly. Appreciate you checking out the show. Go to williambeem.com/iTunes to subscribe and get it delivered to you right away. And of course, we're also on Google Play Music, Blueberry, and Stitcher Radio. Thanks so much. We'll see you again next week.